love, pain, truth.
The rain was coming down hard against the tall windows of the courthouse, blurring the world outside into gray streaks. Inside, the air was still and smelled like old paper and floor wax. It felt too quiet for a day that was supposed to change everything. Arthur sat on the hard wooden bench, his hands clasped tightly together in his lap. His knuckles were white. He kept looking over at the woman sitting next to him. Clara was looking straight ahead at the judge's bench. She didn't seem nervous at all. In fact, she looked like she was waiting for a bus or sitting in a dentist's office, bored and ready for it to be over. Her back was straight, her posture perfect. She was wearing a smart gray blazer that looked new, her hair pulled back in a tight, neat ponytail. Arthur remembered when she used to laugh so hard her hair would fall in her face, but he hadn't seen that version of her in a long time. Today, she was a stranger wearing his wife's face. Arthur felt a lump in his throat that hurt every time he swallowed. He thought about the 12 years they had spent together. He thought about the small house they bought, the way they painted the living room together and got paint all over the floor. He thought about the mornings where he would make her coffee just the way she liked it, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. He had spent over a decade trying to make her happy, trying to build a life that was safe and warm. And now it was all ending in this quiet, cold room. The lawyer droned on, reading terms and conditions about assets and bank accounts. Arthur didn't hear most of it. He just watched Clara. He was waiting for the crack. He was waiting for her shoulders to slump. He was waiting for a single tear to roll down her cheek. He knew her, or he thought he did. She cried at commercials. She cried when they watched sad movies. How could she sit there so calmly while their marriage was being officially ripped apart? There was a moment where the lawyer paused to shuffle some papers. In the silence, Arthur reached out under the table and gently touched Clara's hand. It was a soft touch, a plea for comfort, a silent question asking, "Are we sure about this?" Clara pulled her hand away instantly. It wasn't a violent jerk, but it was fast and deliberate. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. Her eyes weren't red or puffy. They were clear, sharp, and completely dry. She didn't look angry. She didn't look heartbroken. She just looked at him with a strange, polite impatience, like a salesperson waiting for a customer to make up their mind. Arthur pulled his hand back and stared at his shoes. He felt small. He felt like a fool for reaching out. The judge looked up from his papers. He cleared his throat and the sound echoed through the room. The judge asked the standard questions, the ones Arthur had been dreading. He answered in a voice that sounded weak and shaky to his own ears. When it was Clara's turn, she answered clearly. Her voice was steady. "Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. I understand." When the judge finally brought the gavel down with a heavy thud, Arthur felt like someone had punched him in the chest. It was done. The papers were signed. The marriage was over. He sat there for a moment, stunned, expecting the world to stop or the floor to open up. He looked at Clara, expecting her to finally break, to finally show some emotion. Maybe she would collapse into his arms. Maybe she would start sobbing and they could hug one last time. But Clara didn't cry. She stood up immediately. She smoothed down the front of her blazer and picked up her bag. She turned to her lawyer and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice brisk. "You were very efficient." Arthur stood up slowly, his legs feeling weak. He reached out, his hand hovering in the air between them. "Clara," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Do you think maybe we could get a coffee? Just for a minute, to say goodbye properly?" The hallway outside the courtroom was busy with people rushing by, lawyers, police officers, other couples looking miserable. But to Arthur, it felt like he and Clara were in a bubble. He was desperate for one last moment of connection. He needed to know that the last 12 years meant something to her. He needed to see that she cared even a little bit. Clara checked her watch. It was a gold watch he had bought her for their 5th anniversary. She tapped the face of it gently and sighed. "I can't, Arthur," she said. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded like she was declining a meeting she didn't want to attend. I have a schedule to keep. I really need to get moving. A schedule? Arthur asked, confused. We just got divorced, Clara. Can't we talk for 5 minutes? She looked at him then, and for a second, Arthur saw something flicker in her eyes. But it wasn't love. It wasn't sadness. It looked like pity. She gave him a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's better this way, she said softly. Dragging it out won't help anyone. We're free now, Arthur. You should be happy about that. Free? Arthur repeated the word, but it didn't make sense to him. He felt trapped in his own grief. I have a flight to catch, she added, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder. A flight? Arthur blinked. Where are you going? You didn't tell me about any trip. Clara hesitated for just a fraction of a second. She looked toward the exit doors at the end of the long hallway. Just away, she said vaguely. I need some time. You understand, don't you? Before Arthur could answer, she turned on her heel. She didn't stumble. She didn't look back. She walked toward the glass doors with a confident stride, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She pushed the door open and stepped out into the rainy afternoon, disappearing into the crowd of people with umbrellas. Arthur stood alone in the middle of the hallway. People flowed around him like water around a rock. He felt hollowed out. He couldn't understand it. He had expected tears. He had expected anger. He had expected a long, painful conversation about where it all went wrong. He had prepared himself for a screaming match or a weeping embrace, but this cold, calm, and efficient goodbye was worse than any of that. It scared him. It made him feel like he didn't know the woman he had slept next to for over a decade. If she loved him once, where did that love go? Did it just vanish? Or was it ever really there? He put his hands in his pockets and walked slowly toward the exit. The rain was still coming down, cold and relentless. He watched the taxis drive by, wondering which one she was in. He wondered where she was going. She had left him with the house, the car, and most of the furniture. She hadn't wanted any of it. She just wanted out. Arthur walked to his car, parked a few blocks away. The drive home was a blur. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of her face in the courtroom. The way she tapped her pen. The way she checked her watch. It was almost like she had somewhere better to be. Like the divorce was just another chore on a list of things to do. When he walked through the front door of their house, now just his house, the silence hit him like a physical weight. The air was stale. It smelled like lemon cleaning spray and dust. Her coat wasn't on the hook by the door. Her shoes weren't in the hallway. It was like she had never lived there at all. He walked into the kitchen and sat down at the small table where they used to eat dinner. He looked at the empty chair across from him. He remembered how she used to sit there, telling him about her day, complaining about her boss, or laughing about something funny that happened at the grocery store. She had always seemed so real, so present. How could you not cry? Arthur said out loud to the empty room. He stood up and went to the window. The streetlights were flickering on outside. It was evening. The day was over, and so was his life as he knew it. He felt a strange itch of curiosity mixed with his sadness. Why a flight? Why today? Why the rush? He walked down the hall toward the room she used as an office. He hadn't been in there since she packed her bags. He didn't know what he expected to find. Maybe a diary? Maybe a note left behind? He just needed something to explain the dry eyes and the cold demeanor. He needed to know that the woman he loved was somewhere inside that stranger he saw in court. He pushed the door open. The room was dark. The furniture was gone, leaving just a few dusty outlines on the carpet where the desk used to be. But something felt off. The air in here wasn't just stale. It felt disturbed, like someone had been in a hurry. Arthur stepped further into the room, his heart beating a little faster. He wasn't looking for closure anymore. He was looking for the truth. And deep down he was starting to realize that the truth might be something he never saw coming. The room was completely dark except for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. It felt cold, much colder than the rest of the house. Arthur stood there for a long time, just listening. The house was usually so full of noise, the television, the kettle whistling, Clara humming while she worked. But now the silence was heavy. It pressed against his ears. He walked slowly toward the small closet in the corner of the room. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, it was empty. All her coats, her scarves, and her old boots were gone. It was just a hollow space with a cedar smell. He ran his hand along the top shelf, half expecting to find a forgotten box or a dusty sweater. But his fingers only touched cobwebs. Arthur sighed and turned to leave. But his foot caught on the edge of the garbage bin. It tipped over with a loud crash, echoing in the empty room. "Great," he muttered to himself. He bent down to pick it up, but he stopped. The bin wasn't empty. It was filled with strips of white paper. Confetti. Curiosity got the better of him. He sat cross-legged on the floor and dumped the contents onto the dusty carpet. Why would she shred papers right before leaving the house forever? The lawyers had taken all the important documents. What was left? Arthur picked up a handful of the strips. They were from a high-quality printer, thick and glossy. He squinted in the dim light, trying to piece the jagged edges together. It felt like a puzzle he didn't want to solve, but he couldn't stop. He held a piece up to the window light. Transfer of funds to... He grabbed another strip. Account ending in 8891. Cayman Islands. His heart skipped a beat. He moved faster now, scrambling on the floor, picking up piece after piece. The numbers didn't make sense. There were zeros everywhere. Hundreds of thousands. Millions. Wire transfer complete. One fragment read. Liquidation of assets. Read another. Arthur sat back on his heels, his breath coming in short gasps. He knew their finances. He was the one who paid the bills. He knew how much was in their savings, and it wasn't this. This wasn't grocery money. This wasn't retirement money. This was the kind of money that belonged to big corporations or criminals. And Clara had been moving it? Suddenly, a sharp buzzing sound cut through the silence. Arthur jumped, dropping the papers. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was coming from the floor. He looked around, terrified for a second. Was someone here? He held his breath and listened. The sound was rhythmic and insistent. A phone. He got on his hands and knees, crawling toward the sound. It was coming from underneath the large area rug near the desk. He pulled the rug back, revealing the wooden floorboards. The buzzing was louder now. He pressed his ear against the wood. There was a loose board right in the corner, the one by the wall. Arthur remembered it well. In all the years they lived there, Clara had always been weird about that spot. Whenever he walked near it, she would make a joke or distract him. "Don't step there. The wood is rotting," she would say. Or, "I dropped an earring there once. Don't scratch the floor looking for it." Arthur grabbed a letter opener from the empty desk and jammed it into the crack of the floorboard. He pried hard. The wood groaned and popped up. A small, hollow space was revealed underneath. Sitting there in the dark was a sleek, black laptop case and a cheap plastic burner phone. The phone was the source of the buzzing. The screen lit up the dark crevice with a harsh blue light. No name appeared on the screen. Just a number. Arthur stared at it. His hand was shaking as he reached in and pulled the phone out. He didn't answer it. He just watched it buzz until it stopped. A moment later, a text message popped up. Asterisk package delivered. Confirm safe house. Asterisk Arthur felt cold all over. Safe house? Package? This wasn't his wife. This was a spy movie. He opened the laptop case next. Inside was a silver laptop, light and expensive. It looked brand new. Arthur sat on the floor, opened the lid and pressed the power button. The screen flashed to life, asking for a password. His mind raced. What would she use? Her birthday? He typed it in. Access denied. His birthday? Access denied. Their wedding anniversary? Access denied. He rubbed his face with his hands, feeling the stubble on his chin.
He thought about Clara. He thought about the day they met.
It was raining, just like today. They had ducked into a small coffee shop to escape the storm. They had shared a table because there were no seats left. It was October 14th. He typed in 10:14. The screen faded to black, and then the desktop opened up. It wasn't filled with family photos or recipes. There were no folders labeled taxes or vacation ideas. The background was a plain, dark gray. In the center of the screen were 3 folders. Arthur's mouse hovered over the first one. The name made his stomach turn. Operation Nightingale. He clicked it. The folder opened to reveal dozens of files. He clicked on a document at random. It was a list of names, dates, and locations. New York, London, Berlin. Beside each name was a dollar amount. It looked like a ledger, but not for a normal business. The notes next to the names were strange. Asterisk target acquired. Vulnerability secured. Exit strategy executed.
Asterisk Arthur closed the file quickly, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird.
He moved to the second folder. The Prague drop. He opened an image file inside. It was a photo of a building he didn't recognize, but the timestamp on the photo was from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Clara told him she was going to a yoga retreat in Sedona for 2 weeks. She had come back relaxed and tan. But the photo was clearly of a snowy street in Europe. He felt dizzy. He pushed the laptop away slightly, as if it were radioactive. He looked around the empty room again, but it looked different now. It wasn't just an empty office. It was a crime scene. Or a headquarters. He pulled the laptop back. He had to know. He opened the third folder. Asset liquidation.
This folder contained video files.
There was one labeled Final Report. Arthur's finger hovered over the trackpad. He was scared to press play. He felt that once he saw what was on that screen, there would be no going back. He could never unsee it. He could never go back to being the sad, divorced man who just missed his wife.
He was crossing a line into something dangerous. But he had to know.
He had to know why she left him. He had to know why she didn't cry. He clicked play. The video window opened. The camera angle was shaky, probably taken from a webcam or a hidden camera on a shelf. The background was blurry, but Arthur recognized the pattern on the wall. It was a hotel room. Clara was sitting in a chair facing the camera. She wasn't wearing her yoga clothes or her pajamas. She was wearing a dark suit, the kind serious businesswomen wear. Her hair was pulled back severely. She was speaking to someone off camera. The timeline is moving ahead, Clara said on the screen. Her voice was flat. No emotion. No warmth. It was the voice she had used in court today. The extraction is scheduled for this evening. The divorce is the final piece of the puzzle. It severs the legal tie. It ensures that he has no liability when the authorities trace the money back. Arthur froze. She was talking about him. The camera zoomed in slightly on her face. She checked her watch. The gold watch he gave her. I have maintained the cover for 12 years, she continued. Playing the role of the bored suburban wife was necessary. It provided the perfect stability. Nobody suspects a woman who bakes cupcakes and complains about her husband snoring. She let out a short, cold laugh that Arthur didn't recognize. It was a good performance, she said. But I'm glad it's over.
I'm tired of pretending to be ordinary.
Once the papers are signed today, I'm out. The funds are transferred. The identity is retired.
By tonight, Clara will be gone.
The video ended. The screen went black again. Arthur sat on the floor in the dark. He was physically shaking. The realization hit him like a truck. The marriage, the love, the fights, the makeups, it was all a performance. A role. She wasn't tired of him. She was tired of acting. He was just part of her cover story. He was just part of her cover story. He was just part of her cover story. A prop in a long con he didn't even know he was in. She hadn't left him because she fell out of love. She left because the job was over. He looked at the burner phone on the floor. It buzzed again.
Another text message. Asterisk flight confirmed.
Gate pending.
Don't be late. Asterisk Arthur looked at the time on the laptop. It was 8 p.m. She had said in court she had a flight to catch. He thought she was leaving town to get away from him. But she wasn't just leaving town.
She was leaving the country. She was vanishing. He stood up, his legs wobbly. He grabbed the laptop and the phone.
He knew he shouldn't have them. He knew he should probably call the police or a lawyer or just throw them in the river. But a strange feeling was rising in his chest. It wasn't just hurt anymore.
It was anger.
Cold, hard anger. She had played him for a fool. She had used his house, his name, and his life to hide her crimes. And she had walked out of that courtroom without a single tear because she was going home to her millions. Arthur walked to the window and looked out at the street. The rain was stopping, but the sky was still black.
He wasn't just a lonely divorced man anymore. He was the loose end.
And he wasn't ready to disappear. The blue light from the laptop screen was the only brightness in the room, casting long, strange shadows against the walls. Arthur sat on the floor, his legs numb from sitting in the same position for so long. The video had ended, but Clara's voice was still ringing in his ears. Playing the role of the bored suburban wife was necessary. He replayed the sentence in his mind over and over. Every single kiss, every late-night conversation, every time she had held his hand when he was sick, it was all part of the script. He thought back to their honeymoon. They had gone to a small island. He remembered sitting on the beach, watching her stare at the ocean. He had asked her what she was thinking about. She had smiled and said, "Just how happy I am." Now he realized she was probably looking for a boat or a signal or a way to contact whoever she was really working for. She wasn't looking at the water with him. She was looking through him.
Arthur felt sick. He stood up and walked to the window. The street outside was quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement wet and shining under the streetlights. It looked like a normal night in a normal neighborhood. But for Arthur, the world had tilted on its axis. Nothing looked the same anymore. The house, which he had worked so hard to pay for, felt like a movie set where the filming had just wrapped up. He went back to the laptop. He had to know everything. He couldn't leave any stone unturned. He clicked on a folder labeled Exit Strategy. Inside, there were scanned documents, passports, driver's licenses. Arthur opened the first one. It was a passport photo of Clara, but her hair was different, short and blonde. The name on the passport wasn't Clara, it was Elise Vane. He opened the next document. Another passport. This time she was a redhead with glasses. The name was Catherine Moore. She had a whole drawer full of identities. She could be anyone she wanted to be. And for 12 years, she had chosen to be Clara, the woman who married a mid-level manager and lived in a quiet suburb. Why him? Why this life? He kept scrolling until he found a text document, a sort of diary or mission log. He started reading from the beginning. Asterisk year 1. Target selected. Subject is average, predictable, and deeply lonely. Perfect for establishing a low-profile cover. Marriage allows for steady housing and zero suspicion from local authorities. Infiltration successful. Asterisk Arthur read the words with a heavy heart. Subject is average. That was him. That was all he was to her. A cover. He wasn't a partner. He was a tool to help her hide. He skipped ahead to the most recent entry, dated just that morning. Asterisk year 12. The extraction is ready. The funds have been moved through the joint accounts and laundered successfully. Subject remains oblivious. Divorce proceedings will sever legal ties without raising red flags. Once the divorce is final, I vanish. No loose ends. No goodbyes. Asterisk Arthur slammed the laptop shut. The anger that had been bubbling inside him finally boiled over. He grabbed a glass from the kitchen table and threw it against the wall. It shattered into 100 pieces, the sound echoing through the empty house. He didn't care. He wanted to break something. He wanted to scream that she had stolen from him. Not just his heart, but his life. He realized with a start that she said the funds were moved through joint accounts. He ran to the kitchen junk drawer, digging frantically until he found his tablet. He logged into his banking app with shaking fingers. He opened their main savings account. The balance was 0. He opened the checking account. 0. He opened the investment account. 0. Arthur slumped against the counter, sliding down until he hit the floor. It was all gone. Every penny he had saved for retirement, for the house, for their future. She hadn't just left him. She had cleaned him out. The divorce in court earlier that day was just a distraction. While the lawyers were arguing about who got the car, she had already moved the money to her secret accounts in the Cayman Islands. She had left him the house, but she knew he couldn't afford to keep it without the savings. She had left him with nothing but debt and memories. The burner phone on the floor buzzed again. Arthur stared at it. It was an intrusion into his nightmare. He reached over and picked it up. A new text message was on the screen. Asterisk flight 402 to Zurich confirmed. Wheels up in 1 hour. Goodbye, Clara. Asterisk Zurich. She was going to Switzerland. She was leaving the country. She was getting away with it. Arthur stood up. He couldn't just sit here and let her disappear. He walked to the landline phone on the wall and dialed 911. When the operator answered, his voice sounded strange even to him. I need to report a crime, he said. My wife, my ex-wife, she just stole everything. She's a fugitive. He spent the next 20 minutes talking to a police dispatcher and then a detective. He explained about the hidden laptop, the fake passports, and the video. He told them about the millions of dollars and the flight to Zurich. As he spoke, he could hear the skepticism in the detective's voice. It sounded crazy. It sounded like a movie plot. Sir, are you sure this isn't just a messy divorce? The detective asked. People often accuse their ex-spouses of stealing money when emotions are high. It's not about the money. Arthur shouted, and then he stopped. He took a deep breath. I have video evidence. She admits it. She says she used me as a cover. Bring the laptop down to the station, the detective said slowly. We'll take a look. But if she's on a flight to Zurich, there isn't much we can do tonight. Interpol takes time. Arthur hung up the phone. The detective was right. She was gone. By the time the police looked at the laptop, she would be in Europe. She would change her hair, put on her Catherine Moore glasses, and vanish into the crowd. She had planned this for years. She was a professional. He was just a guy who sold insurance. He walked back to the living room and looked at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. It was the only photo left. In the picture, they were laughing, standing in a field of flowers. He used to look at that photo and remember how the wind felt that day. Now he looked at it and saw a spy posing with a victim. He took the photo off the wall and opened the back. He pulled out the picture and ripped it in half. He threw the pieces into the trash can with the shredded documents. It was nearly midnight now. The house was completely dark. Arthur walked to the front door and locked it. He checked the back door. He checked the windows. He felt paranoid, like he was in a thriller movie, but the fear was real. If she could lie to him for 12 years, what else was she capable of? Would she come back to tie up loose ends? The video said no loose ends. Was he a loose end? He sat on the sofa, clutching the burner phone and the laptop. He felt incredibly small. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was menacing. He realized that the no tears he saw in the courtroom weren't because she was strong. It was because she didn't care. She was an actress finishing a shift. The moment the judge banged the gavel, she clocked out. Around 2 a.m., the phone buzzed one last time. It was an email notification. Arthur opened it. It was an automated message from a banking app. It was a receipt for a transfer. But this one was different. It wasn't taking money out. It was a deposit. The amount was small. Only $5,000. The note attached to the transfer said, asterisk for the house. Consider it a severance package. See, asterisk. Arthur stared at the screen. Severance, like he was an employee being fired. She threw him a bone to keep him quiet, or maybe out of some twisted sense of guilt. But the money didn't help. It wasn't about the cash. It was the insult of it. He deleted the message. He didn't want her money. He didn't want anything from her. The sun began to rise, casting a pale gray light through the windows. The birds started to chirp outside, oblivious to the disaster that had occurred inside. Arthur stood up. He was exhausted, his eyes burning from lack of sleep, but his mind was clear. She had shattered his life. She had taken his past and his future, crushing them into dust. But she was gone. She was flying over the ocean, running away to her next adventure, her next lie. He was still here. He was alive. He looked around the room. It was just a room. It was just wood and brick and furniture. It wasn't a home anymore, but it was a start. He picked up the laptop. He would take it to the police station as soon as they opened. He would tell them everything. He didn't know if they would catch her. He didn't know if he would ever get his money back. But he knew one thing for sure. He would never let anyone make him feel this small again. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it in one gulp. The water was cold and tasted like reality. He put the glass in the sink, gently this time. The day had begun. It was a new life, not the one he wanted, but the only one he had left. And for the first time in 12 years, it was completely, brutally, and honestly his own.